to the Future of Food series, where we interview CEOs for 10 minutes to get insights on where the food industry is and where it's going to. And I'm delighted this morning in our second session to interview Gary Nowacki, the CEO of TraceGains. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, John. Great to be with you, and congratulations on your series. I think it's a neat thing you're doing.
Oh, wonderful, and thank you. Now, Gary, you're one of the veterans of the industry, and TraceGains has been around for a while. Can you give us an idea of the journey that TraceGains has taken up to now?
Well, we launched our first product about 10 years ago, and we looked at the food supply chain, which is highly fragmented. Just in the United States, there's about 35,000 food processing and manufacturing sites, fed by tens of thousands of suppliers and so on. So we looked at where people were struggling, and we started with something we call supplier compliance, which is lot by lot compliance, doing things like digitizing certificates of analysis, recording laboratory results, alerting our customers to when there's a problem with an incoming lot from a supplier. So that's been a great product for us. And then over time, we've built out continually more products. At the end of this year, we're going to have 9 products. Our second product we got into was what we call supplier management, which allows people to find and qualify and approve suppliers. And then eventually we said, you know what, we're getting more and more customers and more suppliers. Let's connect them all up on a network to make this information flow very quickly. And in the last year or two, we've shifted to additional issues such as audit management, trying to reduce the length of time it takes for customers and suppliers to get through a painful audit. We also have an internal quality management product. And in the last year or two, we've really been focusing on the R&D people and new product development. So at this point in time, we're pouring millions of dollars into adding functionality for R&D and new product development.
That's wonderful. Now, Gary, you work with a lot of household names, food companies and processors. What are the key issues that they have today that you're addressing right now?
Well, first, they struggle to get information. And if you're a brand owner or a manufacturer or a retailer or a distributor of ingredients or food service distributor, a lot of these companies struggle to get information because, as we know, the food industry runs on low margins. That means people don't get an army to work with in their quality and regulatory departments. And sometimes these documents and this information just goes missing. And so today we have over 1,000 customer sites connected to over 22,000 supplier sites, and it's continually growing. And it's very similar to a concept like social media, where people friend each other, but in our case, companies connect, and then the information automatically flows. We know there's a lot of quality and safety and regulatory issues that are always ongoing. And so our take on things is make it easier for people to get information. If you've got a degree in microbiology or food safety or food technology, don't push paper, don't chase paper. Let a system like TraceGains automate that process for you.
Well, 22,000 suppliers, that's pretty significant. That's wonderful. Now, on your website, Gary, you talk about that 80% of a company's data is held by their suppliers. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, if you're looking for quality and regulatory information, obviously you're having to collect all this information from your suppliers, whether it's something as simple as a kosher certificate or a third-party audit, emergency recall plan, all these sorts of things. If you require lot-by-lot information from your suppliers, that's a whole nother bunch of things that you need to do. And increasingly, we're finding if people are doing new product development, they're stalled out by not getting information from their suppliers quickly enough, and that limits how quickly they can bring new products to market. Another thing about the food industry is a lot of people buy from brokers and distributors and importers who serve an important function, especially if I'm somebody who needs to buy small lot sizes or occasional purchases. But this this complicates the movement of information even more, because now the brokers and distributors have to go get the source documents from the major ingredient manufacturers like ADM, Cargill, Tate & Lyle, so on, and then they've got to pass that through to their customers. So this is another log jam in the supply chain we focus on. One of our customers, for example, is J.M. Swank, a well-known national broker distributor, and they use TraceGains to collect and pass through over 500,000 documents a year from their suppliers to their customers, speeding things up and freeing up professionals to go do analytical work and other good things.
I think that's very important. So there's massive amounts of data that flows from party to party. Can you discuss that in a little bit more detail? How and why the data is important, and also do you see issues of data quality between the different processors and suppliers?
Yeah, in an industry that runs on low margin, it's always a struggle to have enough people moving this data around. And there's also sometimes there's human error when data is entered. It could be something as simple as somebody tries to take a document out of one of their share folders or SharePoint, send it to a customer, and they send the wrong document. So we've developed some AI tools within TraceGains now to instantly alert suppliers and customers when maybe they've posted the wrong document, and obviously all the wrong data that goes with that. We've also developed a bunch of proprietary methodologies where we can look at a document and highlight particular data inaccuracy or potential data inaccuracy, or alert somebody that an incoming lot, for example, is out of spec. One of the examples I'll give is Bimbo is the largest bakery in the world, and they run TraceGains at almost 100 plants now in various countries around the world. And at each of these plants, they have large flat screen TVs at the entrance to their plant floor. And so the people working on the floor can constantly look at the quality of the ingredients that are coming in for that day and the lots that they're working on. So for example, something as simple as flour maybe having too much moisture would cause them to say, let's increase the temperatures on the oven a bit. So data has all sorts of applications. Most critically, we don't want anybody to get sick from eating bad food, but it's also a quality issue. We don't want flat bread coming out of the production line.
Wonderful. And as we know, supply chains or supply networks are very much global, and you often hear people say that supply chains never sleep. I noticed on your website that you do 24/7 monitoring and also alerting for your community members. Why did you go down that route, and how important is it to do that monitoring and alerting for your members?
Yeah, I think the light bulb went off for us about 8 years ago. We got a call from Jiffy Mix, who was one of our early customers, and they said, you're not going to believe what TraceGains did for us over the weekend. We were notified of a lot shipment from one of our key suppliers. It was already on the truck. It had left their factory over the weekend. We came in Monday morning and TraceGains alerted us that this lot was out of spec rather. And so we immediately called the suppliers and told them to turn the truck around. Now, I'm sure the supplier was not happy with that, but they probably would have been even less happy if the truck had gotten all the way to Jiffy Mix in central Michigan. So the supply chain never sleeps, and we can use computers now to 7x24 detect all sorts of problems so people have more time to react. One of the things we talk about is that we have visibility all the way back to your supplier's shipping docks. So if there's a problem, we can alert you well in advance.
Gotcha. And in all of that process, we talk about supply chains being real-time and real-time alerts. Do you see blockchain playing an important role from your vantage point?
I think I'm going to agree with your prior guest. I think it was Sean O'Leary who said that blockchain is still very new technology and there's some questions to be worked out with it. So I don't think blockchain is ready for prime time. And kudos to you, John. You've pointed out, I read a lot of your blogs and postings, you've pointed out some of the challenges with blockchain, like getting the data right. And there are some problems that need to be solved that can be solved only through scientific analysis, laboratory analysis, things like that. So there are a lot of issues we see with blockchain, and a lot of tough questions have yet to be answered. Questions like interoperability, because in an industry that runs on such low margins, if you're asking suppliers to do a lot of work, they don't have the resources to do it. And the worst possible news for them is that they've got to go enter information into somebody's blockchain and then re-enter it into somebody else's blockchain, and so on. It'll be interesting to watch how this all unfolds over the next 5 or 10 years. I don't have a crystal ball. A blockchain could well end up being critical to this industry, but so many questions have to be answered. And if I did have a crystal ball, I would point out one thing about blockchain, which is, I think what I'm starting to believe about blockchain is it's very good technology for tracking virtual items, maybe not so good for tracking physical items. If I want to go buy some cryptocurrency, the key thing that blockchain offers is the immutable ledger and data record. And so I don't want to spend money on Bitcoin and then have somebody steal that from me. I want that to be protected through an immutable record. Supply chain and tracking of physical goods have different problems. So I'm starting to believe blockchain is great at virtual tracking and maybe has a lot of limitations with physical tracking.
Gotcha. Gary, in 30 seconds, if you're in front of 50 CEOs of new food company startups, what advice as an industry veteran and someone who's been out there looking at applying technology to the food sector, what advice would you give these new startup CEOs that are bringing food to the market?
They're obviously focused on survival and innovation, and so they can't overspend on areas like quality and regulatory by hiring an army of people. So there are tools now to automate those processes and allow them to rest a little better at night. The other thing is we believe that with innovation, there was a great study done by McKinsey that showed that after 4 years, 25% of all brands launched were still on shelves. 3 out of 4 were gone. They were failures. And so for new companies, don't give up, be perseverant, but also innovate faster. And that's why we're pouring millions of dollars into new capabilities where we believe software can allow people to innovate faster. And I guess the last thing I'll say is we've launched a podcast series here called C2C, covering conception to consumption, and I've had a lot of interesting guests with more to come who talk about innovation. So I'd encourage people to check out my C2C podcast.
Wonderful. Well, that's it, folks. And I want to thank Gary Nowacki, CEO of TraceGains, for sharing 10 minutes of wisdom with us this morning. So thank you very much, Gary. And I wish you and the team at TraceGains continued success as you help the food industry to automate, to digitize, and to do things smarter. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, John. Congratulations to you and everybody in Toronto on the NBA title.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.